What brought you to Coeur d'Alene, and we can just kind of branch off from there.
Okay. I've been in and out of the area since the 80s, and I promised my kids that we'd stay in one place through high school because we had moved them all over the world until they were in second and fourth grade.
Right,
And
nice. And that's because of your career, right?
Yeah.
In teaching? That's
Yeah.
really cool. That's fascinating. Through teaching, you were able to travel the world in essence, right?
Yeah, we were. So
That's
we
cool.
started out kind of on a fluke. I was working in a high school in Seattle, and one of the teachers came back from an exchange to Japan, and he encouraged me to apply.
Nice.
And right after the Kobe earthquake,
Wow.
we ended up in Kobe, Japan, about 2 years after, and that kind of started the whole thing. So we ended up working in, I think, 7 different countries.
Do you have a favorite or a least favorite?
You know, the thing is you can be in a place that's not that exciting, but the people that you meet and what you do with them really can make or break any place, no matter how beautiful or how terrible it is. And every stage of life, a place suits you better. So Japan was great without kids. It was total cultural immersion.
Nice.
There was one English speaker at each school that we were at. It was absolutely fantastic. Had more fun there than I did in college, by far.
Wow. Are you teaching English, or what is what kind of things
In
you teach?
Japan, they had a program, they still do, it's called JET. I was a sister city exchange teacher, but we had the same job essentially, that there's an English speaker in residence in all of the Japanese junior high schools. Just to get kids used to foreigners, let them practice their English, and to bring Japanese culture home with you.
And that's your role. That's what you're doing. You're the English speaker, and they can kind of come to you, practice their
And
English
you
stuff.
teach
Okay.
classes with all of the English teachers in the business or in the building.
So you're kind of a teacher for teachers then, teaching the teachers the language, or you
It gave
teaching
them a
directly
chance to
students?
sharpen their skills,
Okay.
but we went into the classroom with the
The
Japanese
students.
teachers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'd rotate through the different teachers, teach, 2 of maybe the 4 lessons a week with each teacher, different grade levels.
Okay. Wow.
So that was super fun. But the other years that we were overseas, we were actually teaching in American international schools, which exist all over the planet in most capital cities and most business centers. So like Frankfurt, Germany would have one, for example. Berlin has one. They're everywhere. And businessmen or diplomats' kids need to have schools to go to. And they either will pick the American or the British system.
Dang, that's like the dream. I feel like so many people want to be able to travel, but I'm sure there's got to be some hard parts, right? Like always moving. What was the reason for so many different countries? And did you get to choose that, or was it more of like you knew what your contract was for each one? How long?
They're independent schools, and they, I'm not sure exactly how it works now, but there were job fairs in the winter that you would attend, and you would apply for different positions, because it was just like they ran like schools here. They were accredited by American systems, like we were Middle States Association, just like schools here. Fully accredited schools. They import all the books, they import the teachers, they import everything.
Wow.
So we'd interview. Sometimes you get more than one offer. You'd weigh those out by what the package was, and it was a fantastic experience. Our goal was always to stay in a country 5 years. Sometimes it didn't quite work out.
And you were able to do all of this with your family, right?
Yes.
They came with you everywhere you went.
Yes.
That is wild. Okay.
Yeah, so-
Was there times you would like be trying to get a certain location to go to, or is it more of like you were just a free spirit, you go wherever they wanted you to go?
I learned to stay really open-minded, because the teachers that said I'll only work in, Paris and Rome and places like
Still
that.
great places though.
They're great places,
Sounds
but
cool.
because everyone wants to go there, those schools don't pay.
Oh, okay.
And so it's almost like a working vacation.
Okay.
There are a lot of teachers on the verge of retirement, or that could afford a sabbatical, or
that
someone
makes sense.
whose parents were willing to help support them, because at the time we were doing it, the American school in Rome, it wouldn't even cover your rent to work there.
Wow.
Really minimal package, because there are so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up in Kuwait for 5 years. right around the Gulf War. It was, with little kids, it was the best place to be.
Nice.
Our school had a gazillion teachers. There was over 100 of us. A lot of staff kids. Great medical care, great environment, and we loved it. We stayed about 5 years.
Wow.
Eventually the heat got to us.
Okay, it's really hot over there.
Yeah, and the kids were getting a little bit older, and so we decided to make a change.
Okay.
And
So
moved on from there.
did your kids go to the same school like you were teaching at then?
Yes.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, that was part of the package, that they would take one child per teacher into the school.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you only have one kid then?
No, we
Or-
had two. My husband taught at the school as well.
Oh, you both did it. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So that's probably what helped a lot when both partners have that same job, right?
Mhm.
You can go together. That's cool. And it sounds like the more flexible you are with where you're going to go, the more money you can make with it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you're in a place that isn't on the top 5 list of everyone who wants to travel,
Mm-hmm.
the pay tends to be better.
Okay.
If it's a little bit rougher, the pay tends to be better,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
So what's like the hardest one that you were willing to take on then? Was there some really difficult?
I think the one that was the most difficult at the time was Kazakhstan.
Okay.
My husband studied Russian in college, and he wanted to go to a Russian-speaking country.
Ooh.
The American school, the Anglo-American school in Moscow, was very hard to get into. And we had a choice of Almaty, Kazakhstan, or Kyiv, Ukraine. And the Ukrainians were really wanting to push their own language at that time. And he spoke Russian, not Ukrainian.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we chose Almaty, and it was just a time of rapid growth, high inflation, lots of traffic, and the school grew by leaps and bounds, and they didn't really curtail that. They opened up the waiting list and let everybody in, and it was a difficult period of time to be there for a lot of reasons. It's a beautiful country. The mountains are fantastic. It's on like a fingerling of the Himalayas. They're right outside the city, and it's where the Soviets used to exile people, or the Russians, the Imperial Russians mainly, used to exile people, like intellectuals. So it was beautiful, but it was really challenging to live there in the early 2000s.
Dang, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty scary, but that's cool. That's quite an experience for sure. Out of all those places you went to, you end up here in Coeur d'Alene, though. That's kind of funny. Was you born nearby?
I actually was born and raised in Seattle, and
okay.
I ended up attending Eastern in Cheney, which is 50 miles from here, and I spent a ton of time in Coeur d'Alene and just fell in love with it.
Nice.
And it just really wasn't until our kids graduated, when we moved back to the States in 2010, the economy was not great. We tried to come here then, but there just weren't jobs. All our friends here were saying, you're not going to make it.
Right.
You're not
Because
going
I
to make
think
it.
Coeur d'Alene kind of started as like a, I don't know, like a vacation spot, I would think, right? Or like
Yeah,
just a-
and before that, when we were younger, it was logging, mining.
Oh yeah, it
um,
used to be a mining town. Kind of.
Right, and it was hard here in the 80s. I would have moved here in a heartbeat after college, but it just wasn't happening. The economy couldn't support it. And so life kind of went full circle. And when our youngest graduated, it seemed like it was the time.
Nice. Okay. So you had all this experience traveling the world, teaching, bringing your family with you, and then you decided to get into real estate. What caused that?
Well, I think two things. One, when I was young, I had two uncles that were really into real estate, and I saw how their lives were. And I watched them, have rentals, and as they got older, they had things. They had more security than other people. And I asked my uncle, how did you get started? What did you do? And he said, kid, buy a duplex and live in the crappy half.
There you go. Nice.
And have
Good
help
advice.
paying that mortgage off. I was like, huh. And so that's what we did and where we started. That was the first piece of advice. The second part was when you're not in the military and you're overseas, you're not paying into Social Security.
Oh.
And the goal always was to stay and completely raise our kids overseas until they were college age.
Okay, that was the original plan?
That was the original plan. It didn't work out, but those, I don't know, 10, 12 years that we were overseas, we had to save for our own retirement. And because we were provided housing overseas, we took that rent money that we normally would spend and we saved it up and we started buying properties here just, as our retirement plan. And I ended up over the years, especially after we came back, helping other friends put deals together, analyzing whether something was a good rental or not for them, even a good personal home for them. And I never realized all those years that realtors refer to each other. And I could have built a referral business and worked.
All this still overseas, right? You're doing all
Yeah,
this research.
we did all that overseas,
Did you actually purchase a property too while you were still out of the country?
Oh yeah.
How does that work? You
We-
just need to trust your realtor a lot or something?
Well, we
or-
came home in the summer and did it.
Okay.
We had summer vacations off, so we'd come home. There were a lot of summers where, the grandmas had the kids and we were painting and
So you bought fixer
remodeling. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Sweat equity. We were young and we were going to get in there
That's the
and
way
do
to
it.
do it. Oh, yeah.
And we bought in places that were cheaper. We bought in small towns that were a little bit farther out. And we just wanted to make sure that the rent would cover the mortgage and save a little bit of extra money for water heaters that would go out, or if something went wrong that we could cover it and just let that ride in the account. And it was a great strategy for us. And so
Did you live inside of them too, or did you have your place and then you bought like a personal project property or something?
When we first bought, we had the duplex. We lived in one side
Okay.
and rented out the other, and fixed our side up, and eventually rented that out and went overseas. But the other properties, no, we just bought them as rentals, and we could stay with the grandmas in the summer.
There
So
you
we're,
go.
we were only in town for 6 to 8 weeks, so we do 2 or 3 weeks here, 2 or weeks there, and
That's really
it worked
cool.
out.
That seems like the kind of the perfect system, because then you get to live in the house while you're fixing it up, getting everything nice, and then you got a job that pays for you to live overseas, and you're renting it out while you're gone, right? Making that money.
But anybody can do it. I mean, you can start here with a duplex. Sure, the price tag's a little bit more than a single family home, but you have that help of your neighbor. And if you treat them right and you don't overcharge them, they're gonna stay. You pick a good solid person that will take care of your property and it'll pay off for you.
There you go. That's true. Yeah.
And eventually, it's not your dream, you can, sell and put that money towards something else.
When do you decide to sell a property versus just rent it out though, and let that just keep being like I'm sure it's a little bit of time and stress keeping it versus selling it, but is there a certain point where it becomes more worth it, that you can get the money out of it versus renting
That's
it?
probably a whole conversation and where you can bring in an accountant, but when you have an investment property, you can depreciate that property. So you can take a percentage of it off your taxes.
There you
Like,
go.
is it 29 years, I think?
You can do that
So,
for 20 years?
Over 20 years. So a fraction of that you take off your taxes every year.
Okay.
And so at a certain point, you're not getting the tax advantages of having that. So people will sell and buy something else. So it can really help you with your taxes, and you're providing a home for someone else.
Nice.
Which I always like, because I hate renting from a big corporate entity where everything's through a website, no one cares. I always felt like I was helping families and doing that.
Is it true? I just saw this random fact online about how most rentals are owned by giant corporations, and it's like minuscule of personal people owning rentals nowadays. Is that the case, or is that skewed?
I think that's been the shift in larger urban areas, especially on the West Coast.
Okay.
We had rentals in Washington State, and the regulations and the taxes and just the costs it really made it cost prohibitive after a while. It became really more difficult than in other states. So you really have to look at it case by case basis, but a lot of corporations have been buying up real estate. I've never dug into it too deep because don't forget, when they say a corporation, that's someone that has just an LLC, which you can set up for a couple $100.
Different sizes of companies, right?
Right. So are they really, is it BlackRock who's packaging thousands of homes under their corporate umbrella, or is it, one guy who has 2 or 3 and he's just trying to kind of protect them with an LLC? I don't know how they slice and dice the statistics.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that.
But I mean, I would assume there's probably some regulation to make sure there's not a big company monopolizing a certain city, like buying the majority in a city, raking up the rents, and then trying to profit off of that? Or do you feel like that happens sometimes? Is that still going on?
It seems to be happening, I would say.
Okay.
And I'm all in support of the little guy, and having it as an option for a way to have the freedom that any investment can give you. I really feel that money is about giving you choices and freedom.
Right.
And you shouldn't have to just lock it up with the bank or with, some investment firm somewhere. Those things have their place, but it's better that you have multiple streams of income.
Right.
And if you're someone that is interested in real estate, I support that individual to get that done.
Okay. That's cool. And that's what you've chosen to do, right?
Yeah, and it's really you're leveraging your investment, right? So for a down payment, it's not, you can't leverage stock in the same way, right?
Right.
So it will build over time. It's a long-term play for most people. I'm a long-term investor. There are people that fix and flip. There are people that are value investors or appreciation investors where they buy it and they go, oh, in 10 years it's gonna double. I'll lose money on rent. I don't care. I'm gonna make it all when I sell it. And people in Seattle can do that. They have done it. People in Coeur d'Alene in certain eras have done that. But I've always been the cash investor. I want some cash flow.
So when you're saying long term though, are you talking like 10 years long term, 30 years long term? What's long term?
It depends on the individual, really.
Okay.
It really does. Everyone has a way to get their needs met. You just need to sit down with a couple of different professionals, a realtor, a lender, a tax guy, and come up with a strategy for yourself. But it's really doable, especially, we call it house hacking with a duplex, because it's your primary residence, because you're intending to live in that half.
Right. So you can still get that benefit of only needing like 3% down or something, right?
Well, and if you're a veteran, it can be nothing down.
Oh, really? Wow.
So there's different programs. First-time home buyers can buy a duplex. And there's state assistance programs that are in place, and you can have all of those things helping you, get a leg up and get started.
Are duplexes the biggest you can buy in that way? Or can you buy like a fourplex or bigger?
There's different lending rules. The rules do change. That's a little bit out of my lane. A triplex for sure, but 4 is usually where that happens. So really we want to always make sure that we check with that expert in that field for what's going on at that time and what the rates are for something that big. It can be different, but I just love a duplex. So that's why I talk about them. But you can do it as a single family home. There's just, you really have to have a creative mind and those experts behind you. And I really feel anything is possible. No one can get in their dream home the first shot. That gets harder and harder all the time. But you can get into something, right? When you rent, you're paying 100% interest.
Right.
There's
Okay,
nothing.
any of that coming back?
None of it's coming back. But that payment pretty much gets locked in, and if you're not counting in the insurance and the taxes, those will go up a little bit over time. But the main part of your payment, that mortgage is locked in, and everybody else's rent is going up, and yours isn't. And eventually, it feels really good, right? So it's painful. It was painful for me to buy my first place for, I think I paid $65,000. And I didn't know, yeah, and I didn't know how I was gonna make this $780 payment as a teacher making what I was making. It was a struggle. It was macaroni and cheese and baked beans.
Wow.
You know, so whenever you do it, especially if you're really young, there's some pain to it, but over time it gets better, and then your place goes up, you have that profit, and you roll it to the next house as a bigger down payment.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Have you held on to most of your properties as you've worked your way up, or is it more of like you get one, fix it up, sell it, get the next one, fix it up, sell it? Or what's kind of your...
No, I've like saved up, bought one, saved up, bought another one.
And held on to them.
And held on to them until COVID.
Okay.
COVID was an interesting time because in Washington, the governor had the authority because of the emergency to say that people didn't have to pay rent, but he never said that we didn't have to pay property taxes. He never said that we got a break, and he never told the insurance companies, hey, some of these people might not be able to pay their insurance on their properties. So we were still hung with all the costs and the risk. And even if your tenant was working and getting the COVID money, they didn't have to pay you, and you couldn't really do anything about it.
Nothing at all?
No. So
Wow.
eventually they'd have to make a plan to pay you back.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty vague, and there weren't really any.
And they were just racking up a ton of debt, right? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So I offered to sell my houses to my tenants.
Oh.
I told them I'd give them a deal
Right.
if they wanted to buy my houses to get me out of there, and set them up with lenders, first-time buyer classes. Said, check this out, talk to these people, talk to other people if you want to buy this house, but I need to leave the state. And so we actually used a mechanism called the 1031 exchange, which is where an investor sells a property. The money from the property goes into a special escrow account that they cannot touch. It's held by the 1031 people. And you have a certain amount of time to buy another investment, and that money goes directly from that account to that down payment,
And that's
to that note.
for the purpose of not having to
Pay taxes.
pay taxes each one.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so, and there's time limits on it for how quickly you need to identify a home and how quickly you need to close. And so we actually divested from Washington during COVID. Yeah. So it's a process. I've done that, but I'm so glad I'm in Idaho. I make
Right.
friends over the gas pump.
It's a friendly area.
It
for
is.
sure.
It's super friendly. I've made so many friends here. There's so many interesting people that do
Oh, yeah.
so many different things.
Mhm.
I've joined great networking groups, made great friends at work. So it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made.
That's cool. Wow. You've got lots of experience with real estate. What are some things that make you stand out from? I know here in Coeur d'Alene, there's a lot of different realtors.
There are.
You've got
I think.
tons of experience.
I think as an investor for, 30 years, a landlord for 30 years,
Alright.
where I self-managed up until 4 years ago. I've got a really deep background.
Mhm.
I was a teacher, so I can break it down as people need to hear it.
That's a valuable skill, helping people to just understand, because it can be
Right.
complicated. I feel
Right.
like the whole process sometimes goes way over people's heads.
Right? I like to keep it simple. and really be patient, meet them where they are, help them through the process when they're ready,
Nice.
and be there every step of the way. I want to make it easy and be the local expert that they can rely on.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. And here in Coeur d'Alene, is there lots of big, what would it be called, I guess? The corporate version of a realtor. Is there something like that? Like
So
some big company?
the different brokerages that are in town.
Is that what they are? Brokerages? Okay.
So there are multiple. I am with Century 21 Butler and Associates. We have an office down by Riverstone. We also have an office down on Sherman that we rotate through. We did Art Walk last night. It was fabulous. Local artists brought in their work, and I
Nice.
think Jill McFarlane was our artist last night. We served wine and chocolate, and the public came through and looked at her art, and we actually sold a painting last night, which was pretty fun.
Nice.
And yeah, we're just making ourselves available in the community to help people. My business partners and I try to find places to volunteer, to help people, and just know that if you have a question, that we're available. And honestly, a lot of our job is matchmaking. I call
Right.
myself a matchmaker all the time because I will have people that are not even clients yet that I've met call me and say, hey, I need a plumber. Hey, I need a roofer. You know, auto detailing, who do you know? Dog groomer.
There you go.
And I'm constantly connecting people. And I know that one day that comes back,
Oh yeah.
right? Just being part of the community and
And just having that network of people.
Yes.
Anytime you need something, you'll know who to call. That's sweet.
yeah, so just to be a resource. And one thing that Janine, Mike, and I are doing starting this month, we are going to do Realtor in the Library at the Coeur d'Alene Library.
Nice.
So it'll be the first Wednesday of the month from 4 to 6 p.m. And we will be available to answer questions, to do market analysis on people's homes. You know, if you're thinking about downsizing or you have a question about how something works, we'll be available to answer questions. Free of charge, any kind of consultation around real estate that you need.
That's awesome. What are some of the key things that you feel like people need to know about real estate or preparing to maybe buy their first home or even first investment property? Are there certain things people can do to kind of like set themselves up right?
I think a lot of people wait too long to talk to a lender.
Okay.
I believe in brokers because brokers can look at different programs.
What's the difference? Is a
So,
lender not a broker? Is it two different?
They are. So if you walk into your local bank, they have their offerings. This is all they can do. And they can say to you, I'm really sorry you don't fit in any of our programs, or this is what we can do for you. A
Okay.
broker actually has different lenders that they will, just like, you know, when you go to an insurance broker, they'll go to State Farm, and they'll go to Dairyland, and they'll go to Geico, and they'll tell you what the best deal is. So a broker is able to shop around for a rate or conditions that best fit your needs. I think that people are always afraid to talk to the lender, and they are great people who will set you up for success. And people make a lot of assumptions where their parents will tell them, you need 20% down, or you know, you've done this or you've done that. And those rules, they change a little slightly over time. And a lender is happy to sit down with you and say, you know what, you don't need to pay this off, but it would really help if you did this.
Right.
Or this is how far out you are. You know, 6 months from now, when you've been at that job a little bit longer, we can do this for you, or this is how much we'll loan you. And so just having that information, they will almost credit counsel you into setting yourself up for success and talk you through the financial piece of that. And then what you do is, and I've got great lenders that we work with that are just really trusted. We all work as a team with whatever budget you're comfortable with to find you something. And so most of the time, it's a 6 month to 18 month window with people that we're working with, and we're just checking in with them. How are you going? Do you need something from me? Let's keep your eye on the market, see where you're at. It's not just a last minute thing.
Oh yeah.
But relationships with really good professionals are important.
Definitely. And just that planning ahead. I feel like nowadays people procrastinate way too long.
Yeah.
And it's always a rush in the end. When I first reached out to a lender, I was worried he was going to kind of like make fun of me or laugh at me because I wasn't making a lot of money at the time. But he was extremely helpful. They're super good at like making a roadmap for me. And even though I couldn't afford the house at the time when I first reached out to a lender, he told me exactly what to work on till I could. He even told me like roughly the exact dollar amount, and I was able to go to my manager and ask for a raise and stuff like that. Like, it's really nice to kind of see that, know what goals to work towards. I think that is super important.
So I would pick a realtor that you vibe with, that you communicate well with, and see who their trusted people are. And then when you're ready to go, we're ready to go. I'm not going to force anybody into something they're uncomfortable with. I'm there for whatever people's needs are. And I've had people that they told me their budget, I respected it. They didn't find what they liked. All that financial information is private with the lender. I'm just given a budget, and I've had them come back and say, well, can I get a bigger house? And you're like, this is what the lender said. Well, how about if I pay cash? Sure.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's how private that
changes
information.
things.
That's how private that information is.
Okay.
Right. So we work with the information we have. If that's what you're comfortable with, that's what we're going to do for you.
Do you think, in general, people should try not to get it to the maximum that they're approved for? Is that sometimes hard to keep up with, or are the lenders pretty reserved in their estimate they give
I think
people?
they're reserved in the estimate, but I think one tip I'd give to everybody if you're looking for houses right now is to know what that payment is on that home. You know the price. What's the payment? Are you comfortable with that payment? It should always be a consideration, regardless of what they tell you you're approved for. But one thing a lot of people don't know is that sometimes it's better to have a smaller down payment and to use the cash that you have to buy your rate down. So you can actually buy that rate down by prepaying some of that interest to the lender.
What does that even mean? Like, I don't understand what that is.
So there's different.
You're talking about the interest rate, right?
Right.
Buying
So
that
you
down?
can. There's a couple different ways you can do it. Lenders will have different programs where you can temporarily buy the rate down, or you can permanently buy the rate down. So what that means is the bank wants their interest, and they have a formula for you to prepay that interest, either for the entire life of the loan or for a couple of years where you build into the higher payment. Like, you're killing it at work. In a few years, you're going to have a higher salary. Maybe your wife's going back to work because the kids are going into kindergarten. And 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to make a little bit more money. Okay. And you'd be comfortable with a higher payment. 2 years from now, you can take that money, and that would have been a larger down payment, and you can transfer it over, and you can tell the lender, hey, you know what? I'm going to prepay this interest. And instead of 6%, how about my rate be 5%? Right? Well,
are you negotiating that, or is that what it gets to depend on how much you prepay?
There's a formula that it depends what loan you have.
Okay.
It depends. There's several factors, but there's a formula that they use. Sometimes lenders will do a 3-2-1 buy down. Sometimes they'll do a 2-1 buy down, which means your rate is lower, and then each year it gets a little bit higher. But it maxes out. It's not like those old ones where it was like adjustable to whatever the rate was. You literally go down 2% the first year, then 1% the second year, and then you're at the full rate the third year. And people are hoping that rates will drop and they could refinance the whole loan. It's not meant for everybody, but the good news is, if you have a really good realtor, we can ask the seller to prepay that interest and buy your rate down.
Wow, I didn't even know that was possible. That's really cool.
It's definitely possible. Sometimes there have been state programs in the past that have bought, 0.5% off someone's rate, and that means your payment goes down.
Wow.
So that's why talking to a lender is so important. And a lot of realtors will never even mention the possibility of, have you looked into buying your rate down? Because everyone wants a lower payment.
Oh yeah.
Right?
That's
So
a big deal.
I heard of someone a couple weeks ago that were in the 4.8 range for an interest rate. They were able to buy it down that far.
Wow.
So,
Really good.
there's a lot of factors that go into that. But it's something that one of my lenders can definitely help someone with.
Okay. Wow. Because the interest rate right now is like 6.5 or something, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty high, right? Is that considered high?
It's, tradition.
No, that's not. Oh, I didn't even know.
Traditionally, that's pretty average.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's. I think my first loan was 8%.
Okay.
What's happened is kind of the double whammy of interest rates went back to where they traditionally have been, and prices went up during COVID.
Right.
Everywhere.
It went crazy.
So getting that price increase and that increase of interest rates has just been really hard for people.
Oh yeah.
We have a lot of people that would like to move. They don't like their house. Maybe their house is no longer safe. They can't do stairs anymore or something like that. And they really don't want to give that low interest rate up. And what I always say is, let's see if between the equity that you have and cash on hand, that we can get you somewhere that's more appropriate for you and buy that rate down to closer to where you are. Make it more comfortable for you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just don't think to have someone help them do that math. Because
Right.
their homes, they have a 2% interest rate, but they have a lot of equity, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not taking as big of a loan out, and we can buy that rate down, and they're looking to downsize anyway,
Right.
So it's
Makes
going to
lot
be
of sense.
like really you buy and sell in the same market.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to help people with whatever they need to get done.
Right. And there's not really such a thing as people call it kind of trying to time the market and stuff. But I've heard time and time again that really doesn't exist because you can never know, right?
No, it's just like the stock market. You can
Right.
guess, and people have a lot of things to say, but
Right.
really timing the market, what it really means is buy when it's best for you. And that's different for everyone, right? And so,
But it can be sooner if they prepare and start getting ready sooner, right?
absolutely.
They start making
Absolutely.
those plans and preparation. I think that's huge.
Because then you have the information, you know how to act, or if you can, right? But you can't go wrong. You really can't, and this market is completely different. Every market is completely different. It didn't matter what happened in the past. You need information for what's happening right now.
Cool. Well, where can people find you? People like your message, they like your ideas and the way you do real estate.
They can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm on Facebook as Lisa Bates Patterson, Instagram Lisa Liz Houses, and
Do you do social media too, or is it more of like your own marketing and stuff?
I really haven't. This is my first podcast. I'm kind of excited.
Okay.
Janine and I do a lot of reels. We do different things, have some fun while we're working. It's something that's always I'm growing and developing in,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And but people can find me on Facebook, Instagram.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
I feel like with real estate, there's going to be tons of questions. Like the whole buying down the interest thing, I feel like that is something really valuable for people to know. Appreciate you being on. So,
All right, perfect.
sweet.
Thank you so
Cool.
much.
Yeah, thank you.